This is The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Whether you're a seasoned real estate expert, a first-time home buyer, or if you're simply passionate about hearing small business stories, this is the podcast for you. Join us as we dive deep into the world of real estate and beyond.
Welcome to episode 56 of The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. I'm your host, Janine Igliane, and my guest today is Stephanie Horton. She has written a book for young adults. I read it. It's awesome. I can't wait to have my girls read it, and we're just so excited to have you. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we'd love to start out just at the beginning. If you would just tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I have two teen daughters as well. They are 13 and 15. I'm a physician here in the community. I'm a radiologist, and I decided to start writing for a creative outlet.
Awesome. I guess I want to ask it this question, and I want to ask it this way. What came first, the love of reading or the love of writing?
Definitely the love of reading.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I've always been a big reader. I had a large hiatus when I went to med school, and just like that process of trying to get into med school, and there just isn't a whole lot of time for fun books. And then residency as well is all about big old fat medical tomes, Yeah, and so when I finally finished, I started reading again, and it was just so nice, and I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
I have to be careful, otherwise I will not get sleep.
Oh, I'm right there with
Yes.
you. So do you have a preference, fiction, nonfiction? What do you like?
I mostly read fiction, yes. I think it comes from all those years of just studying. And I read for work, of course, to stay up on things. And, my job is kind of stressful, right? So I think, and that's one of the things I love promoting for kids reading too, for young adults reading, is just, it's okay to read a book for fun.
Yes.
You don't always have to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to learn, but you may learn something, sneak something in,
right?
But sometimes it's an amazing stress reliever.
I totally agree. And I think that's one of the reasons I love to read is for that very reason, just to like escape and go somewhere else and just relax and enjoy. I think reading it's truly, for me personally, one of my most favorite things. Yeah. So you chose to write a book that is really for young adults. Is that right?
Correct.
You would classify it?
Yeah, that's what it's classified. Young adult in the publishing world is classified as for ages 12 to 18.
Okay.
That being said, a lot of adults read it and like it. I have a lot of adult fans, which is fantastic. My heart is for the teens.
Is it?
Yeah, it's sometimes an uphill battle because the teens are not the ones with the checkbook.
Yeah.
The teens are not the ones that are going to write your Amazon reviews. So sometimes it can be a little bit rocky. Okay, I didn't write it for you. I wrote it for a kid, But it's not that I don't love the adults reading it, and a ton of them do, and it's awesome. But it is a little bit of a strange dynamic to try and make it as an author in young adult, just because really the adults are your gatekeeper.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about the book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us about it.
So kind of to encapsulate, an easy way to think of it is Princess Diaries meets The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So two very familiar things. So it's about Kate, who goes off to college in Britain and in England, and she soon has some people stalking her, some things happen, that she meets these two boys who kind of act as her protector, and she discovers that she's not really who she thinks she is. She knows she's adopted, but her real biological parents are actually from this other world, and so she goes through this portal, and then now she's in this other place, and she is supposed to kind of save the world and figure things out, but I really wanted to write a character who was believable, sort of think about someone like me who would be tasked to, fight with a sword and do all these things. Sometimes I feel like, particularly in young adult novels right now, they're very, stabby girls, and which I love a strong female. I think Kate's still strong, but it's also not super relatable to kids today, I think.
Well,
it's a good balance.
No, I agree. I found her very relatable. As I was reading, I thought, I bet we all know someone like this, or we are that person, right? And I loved that. There's also a little bit of a love story in there.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fantasy romance for sure. Yes, because I love a little romance in my books, and so do my daughters, actually.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah, they both of them are like, "Mom, is there any romance in this book? Because I don't want to read it. Otherwise, I'm like, okay."
And I thought you did such a good job because it's clean.
Yes.
And that's another important part. That's always the hard part as a parent when my girls come to me and ask, they want to read a book, or even my son now, he's 12, wanting to read a certain book. And I have to, if I'm not familiar with it, like research it to figure out, is this a safe book for them to read, or is it going to be inappropriate or anything like that? And I loved that this book has all of that. It has the romance, it has the love, it has the adventure, and it's clean at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge right now to find books for your kids, because I think honestly a lot of it stems from the fact that the adults are the gatekeepers of young adult, and it has morphed into something a little different. And it is a huge age range too, from 12 to 18. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's fine for an 18-year-old to be reading about this, and maybe it is. It depends on the person, right? But it can be very difficult to figure out what books feel safe. So it's PG, like bordering on PG-13 perhaps, but language free and no real spice, just kissing only.
I love it.
Yeah, and it is a difficult space to balance. And
oh, I'm sure.
I'm happy to have it out in, I have a publisher, Athon Books, that is secular. It's not a Christian book. Mm-hmm. And it's really exciting for me to put this book out to the whole world, and not just the subset of people.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I want to know, because I just am so curious, how did you even get the idea to do this? Like, how did that even start, that you thought, hey, I think I might want to write a book?
Yeah, so I was working nights and working like a 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift.
Wow.
and it's kind of a grind. And although I love my job, but I was thinking, man, I really need some kind of outlet, and that's creative. And I am not a good artist, nor am I a magician. Nor a musician. Okay. Yes. I'm neither of those things. And then I just thought about what I really like to do, and which is read to relax. And I thought, why don't I just give it a shot? I had written stories as a kid, of course, and in high school I had a friend that we used to write stories and pass them back and forth and do continuation. Yeah. And I remember just really enjoying that. And so I just sat down, and it has been, there's a lot to learn. Let's just say that, because I took science classes. I didn't take English classes. So I've taken a lot of writing classes and workshops, and I have a writing group that now meets at my house. And
nice.
Yeah, and an editor is part of them, and a former English teacher. And
very
so,
nice.
Yeah, it's been an amazing learning process. So it took me a long time to write it, because first it was just a hobby, and I had to figure out how to do it.
So it really was. You just started out just as a hobby.
It was a complete hobby, yes. So and then I thought, well, okay, I guess let's figure out, really progress this a little bit. And so then I started going to a writing group that I found online. And then it just sort of progressed from there. And I kind of put off thinking, well, what am I going to do when I finish it? Because I knew in the back of my head getting published is extremely difficult. And so I just sort of didn't think about it. And then finally I did finish it. And my friend who's in the writing group, he's a professional editor, and he did the editing for it. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I need to see what I'm going to do with it. So there's kind of two paths. There's traditional publishing, which is someone, buys your book and will do the cover for you and promote you and do those sorts of things. And then there's self-publishing, which is also amazing, but then you're in charge of everything. You're in charge of the cover and promoting yourself and all those sorts of things. So I really wanted that team behind me. So the first thing you do is you try and get a literary agent. They are the kind of the gatekeepers for the big publishing houses. Okay. And so you have to learn how to write a letter. It's called a query letter, and telling about your book, which a lot of it is sort of the back cover of my book, actually, is what ended up being very similar to my letter.
I love that.
Yeah, so then you kind of had to personalize each one and find them, and it was a long process, and they often they're inundated with people, and so 2.5 years passed actually, and I got the feedback that people weren't buying young adult fantasy, and the publishers were losing money on it, and that it was just too hard of a market. And so I was like, well, should I give up? And then all of a sudden, something called Romantasy was born. And that is sort of it's fantasy romance together. It could be adult or young adult. And it became extremely popular. It's all about market, right? You know, vampires were popular 10 years ago, right? So then all of a sudden that's what people wanted. But I had already kind of burned my bridges, sort of. You know, I had applied to all these agents. And so then I started going to smaller and medium-sized publishing houses that didn't require an agent. And I found my publisher. I sent it to them. And I sent the first 50 pages in my query letter. I heard back 2 days later that they loved it. They couldn't see why they wouldn't sign it. And then they wanted the full manuscript. They read it overnight. The next day, they offered me a 3-book deal.
Oh my
goodness. You know, it's just patience.
So how long from start to finish did that take?
That was around 9.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I love that you didn't give up. You thought maybe at one point, should I not?
Yes, I wrote another book in the meantime, because that's what they say, write something else, you know, so that's what I did. And I was sort of getting ready to do that one, but then you know, I got signed.
That's amazing. And so when was that?
That was end of December of this last year.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's actually kind of unusual to get a book published that quickly. So I signed with them in January, and they wanted it out for summer reading. And so it was published in June. Yes.
That is so cool. How has it been since you've been published? Like getting the word out and marketing and promoting this, like what does that look like?
So it has been a little bit of a roller coaster, some fun things, some had previously not been a big social media person, and it's a fairly big part of an author's life is to gain followers and promote yourself on social media. So I do that. And sometimes I struggle, sometimes it's fun. On release day, I had so many people reposting and celebrating with me, and that was kind of overwhelming and exciting, because some days it feels like you're talking into the void, you know?
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And just recently I had a Barnes & Noble signing, which was super fun as well. Everyone was really kind. I sold to a lot of strangers, which was great. And then friends came and said hello. And
I love that.
I signed things for them. Yeah.
I love that. So what did that writing process look like? Like, I'm thinking if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I think I want to write a book. What did that look like for you? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so I think my process is probably not one someone would want to follow, because I really learned how to write a book based on this book, and that book has been edited a bajillion times and changed. So probably my writing process now is a little bit more like what you would want to do. So, I think it's good advice to try and write most days, write when you can. I write in the car when I'm waiting for my kids at swim practice. You just kind of have to make it a priority. Sometimes when I get writer's block, I pull out a notebook and I write in that, which is more freeing, but harder to edit later because I have bad handwriting. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. If someone really wants to write a book, though, I think finding a team, finding a writing group, you need to find some people who have been successful at it and who know how to write, kind of, because I didn't at first. There's a lot more than just the story. The mechanics of it are a little more than some people expect. I probably expected. Yeah. But the story is still the heart. The story's the heart. So you can learn all those things.
So I have a question. This is something that I have always wanted to know. When you start writing your book, do you have the end in mind, or does the story kind of take you there?
So I kind of do both. So there's two types of writers. They're called pantsers, which is writing on the seat of your pants and you don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
And then there's outliners.
Okay.
And those are the people who know everything that's going to happen. And then there's something kind of in between, which people often say is like a plantser. And I'm a little bit more in between. I didn't know when I first started that book how it was going to end, but it wasn't very long in before I knew. And then the same... For the second book, I did know the ending. I just turned that one into my publisher. I did know the ending, so I was writing to something. I do think that's more helpful to have at least a general outline so that you know what you're writing towards.
I love that because I think when you're writing, it is a creative process, right? And maybe there's certain things that you thought this is where it was going to end, but really as you're writing the story and these characters are developing, I could see how that could maybe kind of change along the way.
Yeah, my best ideas often come while I'm writing, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was gonna, you have to make sure it fits, of course, but it's fun. I think that is the most fun about writing for me, is creating something that wasn't there before when you sat down at your desk.
Well, and to that point in here, because she does go to a new world, a new land, right, through the portal, it's different than what we have here. And I was really intrigued by that, like the creativity in describing that where she's living, describing the, animals and things that she's encountering. I mean, those were all like totally different than what we have here, maybe a little version. And I thought you did a really good job of that, because so much of reading to me is you create these pictures in your mind, right, of what it looks like. And that was what I was doing. And I was thinking, gosh, this would be such a fun movie if they wanted to make this into a movie. I would love to see it in a movie, right?
Yeah, I know. I love that. I mean, that's extremely unlikely, unfortunately. But, I would love it too. If anyone's listening, that's a movie maker. Yeah, no. But I have heard that before too. And that's something I pride myself on, and trying to really create those images.
Yeah. So what made you decide to want to write something for this age group? Why young adult? Why 12 to 18?
I think some of it is I had kids. When I first started it, they were young. And what are you surrounded by when you have young girls? A lot of castles and princesses, right? And so it just kind of fit where my head was. And I also think it's easier to write a clean book in a young adult market, although I do feel like it was different 10 years ago than it is now, which was a little bit of a hitch.
In what way? What do you mean?
I think more of the young adult books 10 years ago were clean. You could pick up something off the shelf and you knew that it was probably going to be safe for your kid, but that is not really the case anymore. And I think that's evolved mostly in the last 5 years. So that's a little bit like I don't want to pigeon myself as a clean YA book, because I'm like, well, that's just YA, right? But it is a little bit interesting how I have had to market it that way. But it's great. I want people to know, though.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. On a more personal note, what kind of books do you like to read?
So I do read a lot in the genre that I write.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Is that almost like research for you?
Kind of, yes. And then I use it on social media. I post reviews, and I do trigger warnings for teens. I only post closed door books. And so it's kind of a little bit, if anyone wants to follow me on Instagram, it's a little bit of a guide for parents to know what's in those books.
Yeah.
I'm not that fast. I do a lot of audio because it's difficult for me to, most of the time I'm like writing or editing until I go to sleep. So, trying to fit it in is hard sometimes, but so I read a lot of that. Stephanie Garber is one of my favorites. Okay. She's written Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart series. Both of those are probably PG-13-ish, but they still nothing too much happens. But she's an amazing writer. You talk about imagery and I really enjoy her.
I love that. What does the future hold for you? What are you working on? What are you looking towards next?
Yeah, so I have 3 books coming out for this series. And the second book I just turned into my publisher for final edit. So I'm excited about that. They don't have a timeline yet. They did say, you're on the fast track, but I don't really know what that means. So we'll see we'll see what happens. And I have not written the third book at all. I do have a general outline, a very general
Yeah.
outline, and I do know how it ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then while I was waiting for this book, during that 2.5 years, I wrote a young adult murder mystery, and I am going to start seeing if I can get that published.
That's so fun.
Yeah, I know, because I was told, hey, the fantasy's not selling. So I'm like, okay, well, I like mysteries.
Right.
So that's what I did.
I love that. And
Yeah.
again, clean, right?
Yes.
And something
Yes.
so that our...
Yeah, everything I will ever write will be safe for a teenager. I mean, everyone always has a little bit of a different idea.
Mm-hmm.
They're not rated G. There's blood. There's some higher topics. There's kissing. But that's as far as I go.
I love that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to writing, and if someone has that desire, what would you say for them in terms of working towards that or developing that craft? Just start writing, getting connected to people that are in that space, right? What else?
Yeah, I mean, those are my two main ones. There's a ton of stuff online. There's podcasts. I listen to podcasts on writing. There's conferences and things like that. But yeah, I mean, just starting somewhere, and also know that you have to really love it, and that it might be a little more than you expected. But there is more than one way. Sometimes you just want to write just for the fun of it. It doesn't have to be a publication, or it doesn't have to be a book that is a blockbuster either. You know, it's whatever defining your success is.
Yeah. Okay, Stephanie, if someone wants to find you, I know you mentioned your social media, how can they find you?
So my website is skhortonauthor.com. And if you want to find me on Amazon and my book on Amazon, I'm under SK Horton to kind of separate me.
Concealed.
Yes, the Concealed.
The Concealed.
Yes.
Love it.
So, and most of my socials are author SK Horton if you're interested. But yeah, my website will take you to everywhere. So skhortonauthor.com.
Okay. What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. I think we talked about that I'm really passionate about kids reading and just having an escape. And I've spent a lot of time at my daughter's schools helping build up the libraries. And just 2 days ago, I did a writing workshop for 7th and 8th graders. And I'm going to go back on Monday and do the rest of the classes.
I love
so
that.
it's just really fun. So I guess it's just another thing about me that I am passionate about getting fun books into kids' hands.
Yeah. There's so much value in reading, right? I mean, they say the most successful people are readers.
Test scores go way up, vocabulary, writing, and it's an awesome, like we talked about, an awesome stress reliever. I was just like looking online today, and it relieves stress 600% more than a video game.
Amazing.
And just a cup of tea, which seems really relaxing, it's 100% more more stress relieving than even doing that.
Wow. Whenever I go on vacation, it's like my favorite thing. Like, what book am I going to bring with me so I can read it on vacation? Because I am like you. I get sucked in and then I stay up late reading because I just want to finish it, or I want to know what happens next,
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, we like to end with a little speed round. Are you up for some rapid fire questions?
Oh boy. Okay.
It'll be easy, I promise. Painless. Okay. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay. Favorite food?
I am a mood reader and I am a mood eater.
Okay.
So I don't know. It depends on the day.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the day.
Favorite drink?
I'm a water drinker, huge water
Are
drinker.
You? That is good for you. You have to be in your profession, right? Because you're probably on the go and just...
Yes. I guess it's just the most hydrating.
It's good for you.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I am so excited to hear the answer to this question. What is your favorite book?
Oh, I know. So this comes up a lot, and I'm always like, but I feel like favorites is picking, from my children. Like I am the worst favorite picker ever, which is so hard for me to do. So I know you want to know. My favorite author recently, like I talked about, is Stephanie Garber. But I don't know. I just don't pick favorites. I just love them.
Okay.
I know.
You mentioned this earlier. Do you have a favorite podcast?
I do I do enjoy there's a publishing podcast that's called Publishers Rodeo, and then there's a couple writing ones. One of them is called First Draft that I think is really good.
Okay.
And then I do a lot of audiobooks too.
Okay. Audible's amazing, right? And I always speed it up too.
I like to speed it up. And then also, I love my library. I do Libby from the library, and you can check out audiobooks.
Oh, I love that. Okay, last question. Do you have a favorite vacation? You guys have gone on some nice vacations.
Like to go on vacation. Yeah. Probably a Europe vacation. We got to take our kids there for the first time a couple years ago, or was it last year for fall break? And so that was really neat. I hadn't been since the kids were born, because you want to wait till they're old enough so they can experience it. And then there's COVID, right? Where everyone's kind of like locked down. Yeah. So that was fun to see things I hadn't seen in 15 years and to show them.
I love that.
Italy and such. Yeah. So we had a great time.
That is so fun. Well, thanks for being with us. So I have read this book. I can definitely attest to it. I think it is really, really good. And it was funny just going into it thinking, young adults not knowing, and I really was like, I want to know what happens next. So I loved it.
Good.
Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for sharing your story with us and sharing the book with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. If you guys like this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe. We would appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the Home Selling Team on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify to stay up to date with our podcast.